lead.
Well, hello. This is Dr. Roberta Shaler, the Relationship Help Doctor, and I'm here with my amazing colleague, Dr. Beth Halbert, America's teenologist. And we were MIA last week for some very good reasons, so we're happy to be back. And how are you doing, Dr. Beth?
I am loving being here with you, Dr. Shaler. There's no place I'd rather be than getting to have this experience and talking about what we love and making a difference no matter what else is going on in our lives.
Great. And, you know, it's really important for us to focus on what it is that we do every day that makes a difference. I had a lovely testimonial from a client on Facebook yesterday, and I thought, oh, you don't hear that very often, you know? And so she wrote something absolutely beautiful. And I wrote back and said, thank you. That's why I get up in the morning, right?
Those are nice moments.
Yeah. And it really is what gets us up in the morning, because we're passionate about what we do and making a difference and having people really have some skills and insights that they might not have if we didn't talk with them. So for people who want to learn more about what we're talking about, although you'll find out in this program, go to doctor.com. And if you want to know more about what I'm up to, go to forrelationshiphelp.com. And today we have an interesting topic: own your story, uplift your life. Now that may sound a little bit off topic for a show that's about living well with teens, but we always have to remember that we are the major model in our teenagers' life. So if we're not doing it, they're not going to be doing it.
I do what you do, not what you say. I model after you. Whatever you do, doing the same. Kids doing the same. That's one of my songs.
Yes, I gathered that. And what I always tell my clients is children and teens will seldom do what we tell them, but they'll most likely do what we do. So make sure that your life's in order, because you are a walking model for your child, and they're going to believe your behavior before they believe your words. They're going to take it in. The mirror neurons in their brain are going, oh, like that. Oh, like that. Okay, this is what you do when you're angry. This is what you do when you're happy. This is what you do when you want to take advantage of somebody. This is what you do when you tell a lie. Whatever it is that's going on, even the tiny, supposedly white lies. I don't know how some got white and others are purple, but it's the truth.
Yes.
So we have to share this, and this is from your book. I know that you write about owning your story and why that's important. So how about you lead us into that conversation?
Absolutely. Well, you know, this concept is not a new concept. It's all over the place. Brene Brown talks about it. Somebody just sent me another link of someone else that's blogging about it. Landmark talks about owning your story. And I have another twist on it. I'm a hard case. And so I had to put together a process. It's not enough to just say, you know, life is a story, change your story. You would think that'd be good enough, but that dog don't hunt with me. So,
well, actually, that dog don't hunt. I mean, the gap between change your story and change your life has all these chapters in between, and then they go back and you have to reread certain chapters before you get it. So it sounds so simple, it sounds so wise, and it sounds so easy, but it isn't.
Right. Easier said than done. You know, I think it's nice to just have the concept that what we think about is very critical, and that where we put our mind and what we choose to believe, we look for the evidence to prove that. And so if I, you know, believe that the world is full of angry people, I'll say, look, there's one. See, look, there's another one. There's another one. There's another one. There's another one. And I just miss the thousands of people that are not like that, because I'm looking for and pointing out the angry ones. And I'm found them.
Point.
Yeah. Say that again.
Looking for validation of the point that I am at.
Exactly, exactly. So the story that I have, I was actually at an event one time. There were 250 people in the room, and we all wrote down our story. And then we told our story to each other. It's our sad, Gloria Brown says, our sad ass story, our sad, tired story. And this story of how bad it was and how I was victimized and what my parents did to me and blah, 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 blah. Well, I got to the end of the night, and you're supposed to tell your story. And then 99% of the people in the room were laughing hysterically at themselves. Guess who wasn't? I think myself and one other person were still holding on to our stories like a dog on a bone. I knew the right answer. I knew what I was supposed to be doing. And in that moment, I had a choice to either laugh at myself and pretend, or to, go home with my tail between my legs. So I put course together. I actually said, I'm just going to go home with my tail between my legs. And I stayed up all night long and I wrote this workbook. And for the last year, I've had the most phenomenal group of women. I was actually thinking about that this morning, Dr. Shaler. I'd love for you to be a part of that with us. I don't know what you do on Wednesdays at noon, but as my gift, I'd love for you to be a part of that with us. And what we do is we take a different topic. This month, we're talking about body image. And, these are transformational speakers, healers, top producers. And we are still getting kicked by some of our stories. Last month, we did success. The month before that, we did failure. We've done parenting stories. We've done stories. We've done stories about our parents. So I do all these different angles of untangling the story. But let's focus on teens and how this story can impact a teenager. So if I, as a parent, believe that my child is a drug addict, or believe my child is a lazy, no good son of a gun, or fill in the blank, the chances are you get to be right. The child internalizes that as truth, almost via hypnotic suggestion. And then they don't know the difference between where they got that message, and then that becomes their internalized story about themselves. So what I do with parents and teens is I tell the child, you may get this before your parent does. I actually had a family, I do this all the time. It's a little bit shocking to the child, and the parents put up with me. And but it brings collusion with the child because they want to be the one that breaks the story first. And so they're more motivated to break out of their defiant behavior. They're more motivated to try on not being the typical story that the parent has. So it's a reverse psychology of getting your power back, and the kids love it. What's your take on that?
Well, I think that's powerful. I mean, self-fulfilling prophecy certainly works out for all of us. I remember my mom used to say, mom, who very, very, very vocally told me that she never wanted to have children. She used to say to me, it's a good thing you're smart because you're fat and ugly. And, those kind of messages are really, really ones that you take in, because the adults who are telling you how life is and how you come across, and you look to them for survival, and you're used to looking for them, you take what they say, even if your mind says, really? You take it in. And if we don't do the work to ferret it out and reconstruct, then we'll be stuck with that story. So when we're dealing with our own teenagers and our own life as a teenager, we need to look at the impact of these stories that were visited on us and what what we have taken from them and what we might still be carrying.
Right.
You know, so very important. So when the child gets to go first and show their brilliance, what happens?
Well, it makes the parents wrong about their story. So as I was talking with a family, parents and child had been in pretty severe breakdown this week, and I said, I'm going to give you guys a vulnerable challenge. Who feels like they're the most powerful to and most willing to be vulnerable first? And the child went just on the spot. And I said, all right, I'm so impressed. And the parents had this story that their kid doesn't care about them. Their kid doesn't want to engage. And this teenage child is sitting there taking notes, engaging. And, you know, the story is, well, that's just because they're doing it with you, but they don't do that when you're not around. I said, because with me, they're feeling safe. And when I'm not around, we've got to create a container that the child feels safe. So the tool that I gave the child to do was to thank the parent, look them in the eye, smile, tell the parent to smile back, you know, to viscerally change your kinesthetic experience and receive what the child said. And this was, I mean, it sounds like a tiny little thing, but when you've been in sheer rage and breakdown and haven't talked for days, to have somebody look you in the eye and say, you know, thank you for being my dad. Thank you for taking me to my practices. And then the parents take a turn and switch and say, you know, thank you for being in this room. And thank you for never giving up on us. I mean, it just melted. The stories melted.
I can see that. Huge value. I mean, I'm sure there are people watching this who are thinking, wow, what kind of thing would I like to melt? And is it really that easy? Because did it take the reception of that, or would it be enough to change yourself?
Well,
does it have to come back at you?
I'll tell you this. When the child did it, the father rolled his eyes. And I said to the child, and I caught it, and I said to the child, I said, it's so hard for your father to believe that you love him. It's really hard for him to believe this. He's not feeling like he's worthy. He has his own internal stories. I mean, I'm just talking right about him, right to his face, behind his back.
Right.
And then I again, it's kind of like a double dog dare to the child. I say, are you going to stand in your power? Kids love to be in their power. Or are you going to get activated by your father rolling his eyes? And the child said, I'm standing in my power.
Okay.
And then that softens the father. And then when it was the father's turn, he stepped up. And I said to him, I said, I know it's hard to believe. I know there's been all evidence to the contrary. So hard to believe what he just said. And you've got 99% of 24 hours a day that's giving you evidence of something else. Are you willing to be wrong? Do you want to believe that, or do you want to believe this? You get to be right. Both are true. What do you want to live into next? You want to live into the past? You want to live into now? You want to live into the past? You want to live into now? Powerful. It was really magical. It's such an honor when people are willing to just, and it's almost like a drug. I mean, it's really like a drug. It's like, one time I was angry with my spouse, and a coach said to me, your story is that your spouse has all this anger. And what I'm telling you, mirror, mirror, is that what's going on in you is you have more anger and rage than they do. Oh, was that hard to swallow? It's hard to let go of those stories. Be willing to be told.
Well, it is. Yeah. And in that moment, I mean, to be able to even contemplate the ethereal nature of the story, that it got made up. You know, Charles and I wrote a book called Soul Solitude, Taking Time for Our Souls to Catch Up. And in there, one of the things that we talk about is that you need to know you're living a myth, a story. You need to know the story you're living. You need to choose the story you want to live and live the story you choose.
Love it.
And so many times people will ask about that and they'll say, well, you know, I'm living a myth. Sure, because you selected all the components of your story, what you pay attention to, what you're making a big deal of, what you forgot to include. It was very selective how you put the story together. You did it to either make yourself feel better or understand the disappointment and pain, or for whatever reason you put it together. But just know that out of the vast number of components of the story, you chose that focus, and then you made that story, and that's what you tell.
Right. It's hard. I think it's a painful. I was on the call yesterday on Own Your Story. Someone wrote in the Facebook group, is anybody else getting emotional after all of these calls? And someone else wrote, yes, one moment I'm excited that I have a story. The next moment I'm devastated that I've had the story so long. The next moment I have freedom that I can break the story. And, you know, it's a ride. It really is a ride. And to get centered and stay in the center and not be attached to whatever that story might be. Hi, James. Welcome to the conversation. We're talking about owning your story around your teenagers and around yourself and around your life. So feel free to jump in there with us.
Yeah, so when we select the components of our story, the elements of our story, it has an outside motivation, which is to validate our experience in some way so that we feel like, oh yeah, that's real. Even if it, you know, yeah. So to entertain the idea of that could be completely not so is like mind-boggling for many people. And like the people you were mentioning in your group, their experience is varied, because just the entertainment of the idea that it's not an absolute,
yes,
is amazing for some people.
Yes. I remember when I first had that awareness, it was quite a few years ago, and somebody said in the room, how many of you feel like something's wrong with you? And I saw 250 hands go up in the air. Every hand in the room. How many of you think something's wrong with you? How many of you have a story that something is wrong with you? And the other place that really blew my mind and kind of helped have an aha moment was in another big, huge workshop when I was listening to someone where I heard sword, 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 sword. And what I heard was sword. When I was connected with two other people, they heard red elephant and zebra. I mean, I don't remember what they heard, but it was that weird. I don't know how they did it. I don't know how we heard different things. So that was another one, like, okay, this just doesn't make sense, because we heard that tape, all of us in the room, for 2 days, they combined us in a small group, and we heard different things. That was my story, and I would have died on that. The third place that I've seen it is in the brain games. If you ever want to blow your mind around trusting the belief of your mind, watch some of those brain games, because they bring in a lot of the old psychological things, and they teach you what we can't trust and how our mind makes things up.
And just imagine that if our mind makes things up in this moment, how it becomes kind of Velcroed to what we've made up as we went along and accumulated our story.
Yes.
So any of those variables are true. You know, I've had that experience where, you know, for a long time, I didn't think about having been abused as a child. You know, like, okay, there was some of that in there and like nothing. And then, you know, it got front and center in my face. And then I'm thinking, oh, well, you know, I've been doing this work for a long time, and there's a couple of pieces I didn't connect the dots of. Right. And what about that? And so, you know, looked at all that. But then the mind wants to play with, well, what if you remembered it incorrectly? What if that didn't happen? What if that was a suggestion? You know, there's so many variables that sometimes you have no idea what your experience was.
Yeah, and I have really made a study of how our brains trick us. I've really played with, I am so willing to be wrong. I mean, I am just willing to be wrong about everything. And from that space, I get to move into what I want to create next. And in the moments where I'm holding on like a dog on a bone, I get to experience my rage and hurt and pain and feel all the big, huge feelings. I was reading something, someone said, it's like anger is like holding a hot coal and, you know, picking up a hot coal to throw at somebody. And your hand isn't the thing that gets burned.
Yeah. Yeah, it's amazing how this whole thing happens. I know I work with clients all the time, as you do, and when you start just walking through some of these snippets of story that they've told, you can tell that they've told them hundreds of times, either to themselves or others, and yet when you dissect them and you say, I'm not sure how this went there. Can you explain it to me? That gap is almost unexplainable in some times.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? And then they'll go, well, that doesn't make any sense, does it?
Right.
Well, I don't know. Does it make any sense? You know?
Right.
Because we have that issue of owning our story, and it's not just owning it, it's clinging to our story
like a dog on a bone. Yeah.
Yes. So being willing to say, not so attached, maybe could set that down for a while and entertain the idea of a new one. I think you're speaking to the work that I do with couples, because so often they come in and they've got, you know, they'll put 3 or 4 big, well-gnawed bones in the middle of the room.
Yes.
Yes. And I'll say, yeah, I see them. I see them, and they tell me about them, and you know that it's a big deal. And then I say, all right, let's just leave them there for a bit, and I actually have them physically moved to another part of the room. And then I say, all right, what would it be like if we left those over there, and you saw each other now? Would you be attracted to each other? Do you love each other? Like, what's going on aside from those bones? And they're saying, yeah, but, you know, yeah, but.
Yeah, but we need to get those bones back over here.
That's right, because our relationship is all about those bones. Well, no, actually, it's not.
Unless it is.
Well, it may well have become that, but this story morphed over time. Let's see if we've got the spotlight on this part of the story, but there's other parts of the story that are still functioning here, and maybe we'll want to take the spotlight over there.
Yeah.
And what would that be like?
Right. Because if they weren't willing to give up those bones, Dr. Shaler, could you do anything with them? Like if they were not willing to let go of the bones and move to the other part of the room,
Well, yes and no. If they wouldn't, it wouldn't deal without them. Sometimes we go back and I'll say, each of you tell me the one thing that you would like different about this pot of bones. The one thing. And then we'll have another conversation about whether that one thing can be solved or ameliorated or changed. And then we'll go back.
Right.
Sometimes it's too quick. They can't entertain that idea of giving up their angst and their anguish and their "you did me wrong" story, right?
Wrong song.
So they need a little assurance that we are going to talk about the bones and we're not going to leave that completely behind. So yes and no. Sometimes we have to take a step back before we can move forward.
I agree. And what I call that is turn it up. So if you are hanging on to a bone, you know it's burning you, you know it's not working for you, you know you don't want to have it, you know you don't want to keep it, but for the life of you, you can't let go of it. Instead of trying to turn it off or stop it or quit it, instead I call it Tai Chi it. And I move in the opposite direction and I say, let's play full out. Let's turn up the volume. Why should we get divorced? Instead of why should we stay together, let's go. Let's talk about it. Why should we get divorced?
Good strategy. Could work. I'm sure it does sometimes. That's the thing, people listening need to know. We talk about these things, but we have a lot of strategies in our toolkits. We're calibrating what's going on with the people in front of us. Don't think that we're saying, here, do this. This is the thing that works.
Exactly.
Because you have to be able to see the whites of their eyes and watch their body language and listen to everything they're saying and doing before you can make any of these suggestions. So this is not a panacea that we're talking about.
All you got to do is yeah.
Yeah, it just isn't that simple. But it's so important for us to realize that there are many ways that someone can get help and can see a pathway from where they are to where they most would like to be. Yeah. So I just wanted to put that caveat in there, because when we talk about strategies, we're talking about a conglomerate of strategies that we help people with, not just go home and do this, because that's not where it works. If it would have worked, it would have already worked and you wouldn't be in our office. So
well, and that's another fun way to play a story. How's that story working for you? And I've even gone as far to say, if you are not willing, and I'm not saying you are, but just willing to be wrong about this, like what if this was not the truth and your child really does love you? Just what if you are lovable? And if you're not willing to go there, then you will take that story to your grave. You get to be right, and you are on a trajectory of wherever you are and what you see, you will get there.
That's right. You know, I have incidences in my own family where I come. My father had 10 brothers and sisters, so lots of family there. Where that taking it to their death, the rightness, was paramount. Just
a drug.
That's why I talk about hijackals, and you know we're not talking about them so much today, but the hijackals are chronically difficult people, and hijackals is the term I coined for them. Chronically difficult people. And if you go to hijackals.com, you can download my free ebook, How to Spot a Hijackal. But I'm talking about coming from a family of hijackals. So one of the criteria is that they have to win in the moment. So if their winning story is to pull that one out. They're absolutely adamant that you did this with this motivation at this time because.
Right.
And that is their entire life. That's the way they'll present. And they will go to their grave being supposedly right because they are so fearful of not winning that they will not entertain the possibility of being wrong.
Right. And
Ugly.
It's not pretty. It's not pretty. I had a spouse in parents in my office, and they had stories going on about each other that were deadly. And I said, after, you know, I'm not very tolerant of staying in the story. And you know, some psychologists are like, let's just talk about it. Let's talk about it. I'll actually say, if you want to stay in this current story, I'm probably not your person. Because what I'm hearing you say is, if you are right and you are right, then you're really wasting your money with me. You're absolutely wasting your money with me if what you're saying is the truth and what he is saying is the truth. I would suggest you go down a different path.
Yeah, what's to talk about? I mean, we're done. Like, we've got 2 ironclad strong boxes that don't open. Now, what are we going to do? Sit and look at them?
Yeah,
you know,
and it's a little bit different with teenagers, because with a spouse, you can divorce them. But with a teen, when you have a story about your child and your child has a story about you, you know, there are parents that have to go to those extreme measures. But ideally, we're able to transform the stories. But it is that same significance. And I watch parents 20, 30 years later that have lost contact with their children because of their stories that they would not let go of.
And sometimes it's the child that created the story. And that's very difficult too.
Yes.
Right? I mean,
yes.
I had one of my children was very angry. He was almost born or angry. And when I divorced his father, he would have him on the weekend, and more than one time I would look out from my kitchen sink to see this car spewing dust and screeching to a halt in front of my kitchen window, and it would be his father bringing him home, slamming doors, opening them and telling him to get out. I divorce you. I never want to see you again. And I would go out and say, I understand you're angry. Divorce is not an option. So leave him here, try again next time, right? But that frustration, that I don't know what to do. And in that particular case, it was, he's so like me that I cannot stand it, and I refuse to see myself in the child. So they would butt heads, and then he would want to divorce the child.
Yes.
Well, now they're so intertwined, and they have businesses together. So they've got that one nailed down, because it's all about the money, right?
Right.
But, you know, it is so true what you're saying. Like, we can divorce another human being that we're married to or in partnership with, married, you know, meaning loosely, not for purposes of the IRS. But you can't do that with your children.
Right.
And if you have that idea that you can, even that little bit of a story that you can say, well, there's an option here, we can part ways, you're on the wrong path already. Now, from my hijackal practice, sometimes I'm confronted with a teenager who is really dangerous.
Mm-hmm.
And they do have to part physically. You know, we have to do something to remove that child, so that child will not end up in a movie theater with an AK-47, right?
Right.
But that doesn't mean that emotionally you divorce the child, because you are showing that super love to say, I will even accept the fact that my child has this hijackal, and this is severe hijackal. It's low-level hijackals, has a severe hijackal potential, and I have to love him enough to do what's in the best interest of himself. Otherwise, he'll be spending the rest of his life in jail, or she will, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's very important for us to understand that how these dynamics work, because you really cannot just get rid of your kids. And many people do that emotionally, even though they're living in the same house, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the children hide out in their video screens and in their rooms and in their caves because they can't control, because they don't have the impulse control of the frontal lobe fully developed. And they're having thoughts of anger, upset, rage, hormonal rages. They don't know how to control their bodies. They don't know how to control their mouth. And so one of the ways that they keep from hurting the one they love, their parents, is to hide out and to go away. And then the parent feels like they've given their life to them, and they only come out when they need something. It's because that's the only one that they can come out and ask for. You know, if they could do it without asking, they would.
No, they're not going to risk rejection, you know. It's such important stuff to talk about. So very important, because the growth experience, now I'm not trying to just make light of all this, but the growth experience of learning about ourselves as we parent teens is invaluable. But we have to be open to having that growth experience, to know that we can have that growth experience safely. So the work that you're doing with teens and parents is just amazingly valuable work. And as you were holding that up, you know, and I'll reiterate, if this is sounding like something that you'd like to tell somebody you know and love about, go to drbeth.com, you know, download her free ebook, Embracing Defiance. Get on with it. Don't waste a moment.
Mm-hmm. And there's a chapter in my book that's about own your story and how to actually go about doing that. And you know, the same divorce experience, and talking about the father seeing your husband seeing himself in the son. What I see quite often is moms seeing their son looking like the spitting image of their dad. And
right.
They have a story. You're going to be like your dad. You're going to be a drug addict like your dad. You're going to turn into your dad. And so I try to play on both sides of this fiddle. One, I tell the child, are you your dad? And I try to help them in the individuation process. And then I try to help the mom unravel this story that this is not your husband, even though he looks, you know, he's all the good characteristics of your husband. So I try to plant seeds of, you know, this is the husband that you fell in love with. This is the love of your life. This is the one that he gets to choose who and what and how he wants to create his life. He's not the one. But when the kids, especially teenagers, get in their power and yell at the parents and do all the things that kids do. I hate you. I don't love you. I don't want to be with you. I wish you weren't my mom. And no one else gets to see this. So the story becomes like I'm the only one that this is happening to. And that's why I love my parenting groups, because I have everybody sharing so that no one feels like, oh my gosh, their kid did that. Thank goodness. My kid at least, you know, shows up for the psychological sessions. At least he comes to that.
Yeah. Yeah, so much to talk about, and we'll have another great conversation next week, no doubt. I'll be speaking to you from another location in the world. So we'll have some fun with that. And again, you know, we showed you drbeth.com. Also know that if you need some help with your relationship or figuring things out in life, you can go to forrelationshiphelp.com. And if you think you happen to have a chronically difficult person by the tail in your life, go and download my free ebook, How to Spot a Hijackal. because you need to be strategic if you're with a hijackal. And that may not be something that you have those strategies. So you need to add to your toolkit. So it's been a great conversation, Dr. Beth. Got something to leave our friends with today?
I would say in my world on Own Your Story, it's just be willing. And this is a, if you're ever in a fight, one of the things that I always say is, I'm willing to be wrong. Doesn't mean I am. Truth is, I probably am, and I might be, but I'm willing. I'm willing to be wrong about this. Maybe I'm getting tricked in the brain. I'm willing to be wrong. I'm not going to live into the past. I'm going to live into what I want to live into next.
Yoo-hoo! Great.
How about you, Dr. Shaler?
Well, I think I've probably said this before, but I think it's the most important thing that I can share with anyone. So I'll share it with us today. The truth is what you do. Believe that about yourself. Believe that about other people. No matter what you say you meant to do, you want to do, you're willing to do, it doesn't matter. The truth is what you do. Your behavior is your belief. So you might want to think about that a little bit, because I know I think about it often. So until next time, thanks so much, Dr. Beth. We'll talk soon.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye.